Hi guys, Bob here, and in this video we are going to talk about drawing an eye in Sketchbook. So I'm used to using Rebel, which I'll show you a kind of image in a minute, and I get much more professional, I think, results from it, a bit more painterly feel to it. But in this case we're looking at Sketchbook. Now I did draw this eye in Sketchbook, and got a kind of example angry eye down below, which is the purpose of this video. So I'm going to take you through me drawing it, and I'll talk you through some of the process, but I've tried to leave as much of the process in as I can. I have speeded it up. It took me about an hour to do this drawing. But first of all, we just start with simple shapes. We start with a simple grid using the X, and we then start putting in some shapes. So we do have like simple shapes like triangles, squares, circles that we use throughout this process. So we start with that triangle here. You can see it in the eye down below, and if the eye had been a bit bigger you would have seen that other triangle coming in from there. Now the eyebrow I have done kind of goes up. As you can see, this is how you make it angry, is that kind of up direction, and it's staying up. So yeah, so we then move on to the kind of pupil of the eye, and you can see that with most angry eyes what you'll end up with is a pupil that's high up. It wouldn't be sitting in the middle of the iris, or the eyeball, sorry, because that would be a normal kind of facial expression. So yeah, then you've obviously got the bottom of the eye, and you've always got to remember that an eyeball is a sphere, so it sits inside the skull and it will push parts of the skin further out than others, and we need to remember that when we're shading. Do note this little ridge underneath the eye. It's very important that we look at that. Now here I did just create a new layer. We can create a new layer using this icon, and we can change the opacity using this bar. So I'm just sketching in and darkening down areas. As we can see, we've got some dark areas of the eye all over here, very dark in the corners, with some nice white with some grading on it to show that spherical look. Now you'll notice I've just changed the background to grey, and we can do that using that circle there. We click on that and it lets us choose a kind of light grey background. Now in here you can see I've added more lines to add in more detail to the eye in the corner where the tear duct would be, and we've started kind of adding in some eyelashes. I have said about this area here, and you can see that the brow is furrowed, his eyebrow is sitting low, he's looking up towards the camera, and that's what you really need to capture to get the eyebrow look. Now what I would point out when I'm doing the eyelashes is that they tend to be in triangles. They tend to have 3 or 4 eyelashes. They tend to converge on one point, which is a bit weird, but it's something to note that they tend to be in kind of a triangle shape. You'll see me do that later. Now there is some good brushes like the texture brushes that kind of gives good skin brush texture, but Sketchbook I really struggle with. I said that in one of my previous videos, that I really struggle to find the traditional look, and this drawing therefore took me actually double the time that it took me to do it in Rebel, where I was able to capture all the things that I wanted to do. Now that might be due to my skill level, which I have been drawing for a number of years, and it might just be me that's not good enough, I don't know, but I do find it a lot easier using Rebel than Sketchbook. But we'll keep going with these Sketchbook tutorials as well, because a lot of people use Sketchbook. It's a good app. It's good on the Android tablets as well. But like I said, just note this ridge between the eyeball and the kind of edge of the eye. If you were to look at an eye from the side, and get yourself some references to look at. But you'll see I'm drawing these eyelashes in this kind of triangular, converging on one point. You can see it up here, and various areas. Now I'm doing kind of chicken scratching, which people kind of frown upon. You should try to use your shoulder, and you should try to kind of do a nice kind of curved edge there, rather than doing the kind of chicken scratching as they call it. But I quite like doing chicken scratching, but that's me. Now I'm doing some shading here. You'll notice that I use different pens and brushes for this. I'm using a smudge brush here. It was sort of working, but it was dragging too much of the colour. You could go into settings and lower those settings. But notice that you do get the detail of the eyebrow, but you do lose some of that here, which is why you'll see later on I'll put some darks and some light colours into the eyebrow a bit later on. And again, the direction, a lot of people draw their eyelashes always going like this, and I'm quite guilty of that. But if you notice here, eyebrows tend to have hair going in many different directions that follow sort of the shape of the head. So again, I'm just adding in detail to the eyebrow. I should have made it darker to begin with before I started adding in all of my little kind of individual hairs. But this was just a bit of trial and error. I seen a drawing I liked, a picture I liked. It was similar to the photo I've got here. I saw it on Facebook one day. I thought I'll go and have a shot at that and see how I got on. And this is the results that you're seeing, and I figured I would take you through. But notice these folds. So these folds, there's a fold in the eye here because he's brought his skin down, and that then curves up that way. So you need like a darker area here where it gets lighter to show a kind of cylinder shape. So there's a bit of a cylinder shape, and if we were to shade in a cylinder, we would end up with kind of darkness where the light's not hitting if the light was coming from that direction, and less light, which is why you end up with this dark area and then up to a light area. Again, just adding in details on my main drawing here. I did do a bit of transformation around the eye, the iris and the pupil. I felt it was too large at some point, and then I felt it was too small. It's all trial and error. Just have a shot, use your grid lines, see what looks good for you. You will find that the pupil is really, really dark. It's always dark. Imagine it like a pit. Now I have, again, discussed this a few times, that the strands kind of fall into a donut shape when you're drawing, and they fall into the eyeball, I guess. It's quite scary when you think about it. It's a bit like an abyss in here, and your pupil sits in the middle there, sucking all the light into it, a bit like a black hole, which is a bit disturbing. So doing some shading here, shading that ridge like I was talking about, and adding more detail, darkening down the edges, darkening down those areas where the light won't hit as much. Ideally you would find a picture that's got one light source, talked about that in the past as well. And trying to get circles. Now I did eventually use the circle tool just to help me out a bit with some of the drawing. And you can do that, you can use all the tools I've got. That's everybody uses them. Even in traditional art you use sponges, you use compasses to get that nice circular look. So I'm trying to show the fold of the eye here, and like I said, just sketching these in. It's always the same. I sketch and then I see something doesn't look right, I'll sketch over the top of it. Don't worry too much about that. Chicken scratching again. But I really struggled with Sketchbook. I really struggled to find the right tools to use to get the results I wanted, to get that shading to come in nice and flat, and instead it kind of come in blotchy, and then I had to kind of try and blend it out, which does work. Again, all these things help towards giving your painting some texture, or your drawing some texture. You can see I use a kind of hairy smudge brush here, flat bristle brush, and it gave me some nice texture to my drawing. Doing new layers. This is just me stage saving as I called it. So over here I'm doing some stage save and some moving of layers around. Now if you like working in layers, you might want to do different layers. You might want to turn on and off layers just to see what works for you. I prefer to work in one layer, and it's just to do with when trying to manipulate lines. If they're in a different layer, you're not going to be able to touch them, and they're just going to stay there. So we're continuing now. What I'm doing here is I'm adding some texture into the iris. We do have these kind of strands of hair, it looks like strands that head towards that dark abyss that is the pupil. It does tend to darken right around the pupil area, gradually. It might be subtle, but it does happen. You can kind of see it here, just in this area here, and you can see some of these strands, and it's not as pronounced My drawing's quite soft, it's quite subtle, it's quite airbrushy looking. I have mentioned that in the past, that's not usually the look that I'm trying to get, and I do struggle to get away from that in Sketchbook. All my drawings seem to kind of go into that kind of airbrushy look whenever I use a Sketchbook, so be mindful that you might be getting held back by the software that you're using. Now I did like this bit, I like this, the brush I was using there, and then I was able to smudge that into the kind of more hairy looking pupil iris, if that's the right words, because I haven't done my anatomy before doing this. Now we're looking at some highlights in the eye, some highlight here, and just finishing up getting the things together. But I'm not happy at this stage. I'm still progressing. I'm still trying to get my values, trying to get my darker values moving to the lighter values, trying to get some skin texture in here. The problem with using texture brushes is that you end up with a kind of common theme because the texture doesn't change. It's not like a traditional sponge, for example, where you would have your pressure of your hand given different types of texture to the drawing. Instead, you've just got this digital texture that is all based on a stamp, and it remains kind of the same all the way through, which again gives your picture a bit of that digital look. Darkening down the pupil, still wasn't happy with these lines, hence why I then used the circle to try and help me get this circle looking proper. Trying to get some texture. You can rub these out, it adds a wee bit of flavour to your drawing. Happy accidents, as Bob Ross would used to say, and that's what I like. I like how kind of happy accidents. I like to see where a drawing goes. I don't really want to replicate exactly what I see. I'm trying to make my own spin on a drawing, and I would suggest to you to do the same. Try your best. Just remember these kind of areas, they do make all the difference to making an eye look realistic. If you didn't have that, you would be missing some of these folds of skin that occur naturally around most people's eyes. And the same with this, the same with these layers of skin into the tear duct, and the duct looking nice and glistening to give it that kind of watery, liquefied look. That might be something I'll look into showing you at a later date, because some people do it really, really well, and you're like, oh my goodness, that looks lovely. And you should maybe try, give it a go. We'll maybe have a look at that in a later video, we'll see. I'm just trying to find videos that I can do to teach you some drawings and some drawing techniques while using Sketchbook, using Rebelle, different subjects, and see where that goes, see how it's received. So we'll see how these videos go. But it does help me, because quite often I'm struggling to figure out what to draw, and I'm quite often struggling to figure out what subject to talk about. I've also figured out how to annotate on the drawing as it plays back, which helps. Excuse me. And you can see I'm adding in, I'm kind of doing layer management again, lifting layers, moving layers, which helps. Sometimes you can double up a layer, you can duplicate it and then merge it together, and that'll darken your image down immediately without you having to go over all the lines again. It does help. It's another kind of trick. At this point I'm getting happier. I'm feeling a lot better about my drawing. It's starting to look like I'm wanting it to look like. Found some good brushes to try. The problem was I never put them into my favourites. I did try to drag a few over here, you will see me, and if you want to do that, you'd hover over this, you would click on it and you would drag it across. Now if you look back at this video, you will see me doing that. You'll see me getting those icons and dragging them across, which ultimately takes them away from here, so you might want to duplicate them first, which you can do from the little pen menu, the little kind of circular menu that comes up. Here I'm trying to show some of that structure to the eye, that the eyeball is going to fall down here and it's going to go up here, which is what pushes the skin out. It is a sphere after all that is hiding inside your skull, as I've mentioned already. Just detailing, final detailing some of this highlights along the ridge of the eye, and we're getting close to the end here. We're about a minute away from finishing. So I hope this has been of use to you. If it is, if you want more details, if you want more eye drawings or different types of eyes, let me know. We will see where we go. Just remember to get that shading in there, try and get that shading showing the ball. I've not done so much a good job here. I would have maybe went back to this and tried to shade that more like a sphere. Check out my other videos, there's loads of different videos from drawing dragons to speed drawings of just movies that I like. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm just finishing up, cleaning up the areas. Can't clear up, unfortunately, my little annotation drawings because they're here. And that's us done. Thank you very much for watching, and Wee Bob is out.